What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Project Boro podcast. And, well, we're here for a double bill this week. Me and Chris will be back later in the week to talk a little bit more in detail around Boro's January, looking ahead to February in terms of the fixtures and results. But he's back by popular demand after we had a fantastic summer podcast talking about all of Boro's summer business. Craig Johns is once again back to join us to discuss everything January, which of course was another fantastic month for Boro on the pitch, but was it a fantastic month off the pitch in regards to Boro's transfer window? We'll get into the ins and the outs. We'll talk about what Boro did do in the window, didn't do in the window, amongst much more. Firstly, Craig, though, a huge thank you for joining us. How are you doing? And I guess since we've not spoke to you since the summer, what are your thoughts on Boro's season so far? Wouldn't have thought we'd be sat in this position when we last spoke in August, whatever it was.
Yeah, it's been a cracking season so far, hasn't it? And long may it continue. But yeah, thanks very much for having us on, lads. Always a pleasure. And yeah, it's fair to say that I'm ready to sleep for a month after a busy January.
Yeah, I can imagine. We'll get into all the deals. Obviously, to break them down briefly, we had quite a few incomings and quite a few outgoings as well this month. We got Leo Castledine, of course, from Chelsea on a permanent deal after he had a successful loan spell with Huddersfield Town. We signed Finley Munroe as well from Aston Villa, I think it was, after he had a loan spell at Swindon. Jeremy Sarmiento has joined on a loan to buy. And we finished the window off with, I think, Joe Wildsmith from West Brom on a loan going out. Sonny Finch, Lucas Engel left on a permanent deal. Delano Burgzorg's gone to Bristol City on what I think is a loan to buy too. Abdoulaye Kante has gone back to France on a loan. Sverre Nypan was recalled by Manchester City. And I guess we'll get on to this as well. Seny Dieng, what's going on there? We'll certainly put that question to Craig. And of course, I guess the big news is Matt Targett and Hayden Hackney are still here. So first of all, before we ask Craig for any insight and initial thoughts on the window, I'll come to you first, Chris. What's your sort of initial thoughts on Boro's January window? Lots of movement both coming in and going out as well.
Yeah, I think it's been a decent window. It certainly has not been anything like the total disaster that was last January's transfer window, which didn't address any of our defensive problems. And as we know, Kelechi Iheanacho was not the best signing to replace Latte Lat. So it's certainly not that. I think it's a solid, decent window. I would have liked a striker. I know that seems to be a bit divisive online at the minute now. People saying we did and we didn't need a striker. I think the fact that the football club have spent most of this window looking for a striker tells you they thought they needed a striker. So, yeah. It's one of those where I think if you include the addition of Adilson Malanda, who obviously wasn't able to play before January, so the guy who we did the paperwork and the legwork for prior to January was now able to play in January, I think it's been a pretty decent window. We've definitely improved at the back with the additions of Munroe, with the additions of Malanda. Sarmiento, listening to Kim Hellberg speak about Sarmiento, he seems to love him. I wish my wife would speak as positive about me as he spoke about Sarmiento. Honestly, find someone who loves you like Kim Hellberg loves Sarmiento. I'm excited to see what he can do now because he spoke so positively of his strengths and what he can do for the team. And yeah, I'm really excited to see him play now. The only contentious one for me is if we weren't going to bring a striker, I wouldn't have loaned Burgzorg out. I know Burgzorg is a lightning rod or a red flag for some fans. As soon as you say his name, people just jump straight on it and say he's terrible, he's awful, he's rubbish. But if you look at what he's done this season in the games he's played, you know, he got the assist against Ipswich Town, he got the assist against Sheffield Wednesday, he got the assist at Charlton, he got the goal at West Brom. He's already won us 8 points directly just from those goal contributions. So for me, he did have something to offer, more so than likes of Hamilton, the likes of Hansen. Obviously, Nypan who's gone. So yeah, I'm not for months saying I'd have started him, but I wouldn't have let him go personally. But that's me. But we put a big asterisk there saying I don't know if there's more behind the scenes there, whether Kim Hellberg didn't like the way he trained, or something. He's asked to play first team football somewhere. There could be a whole host of reasons why he's left. But on the face of it, I wouldn't have let him go if we weren't getting a striker in. So in that sense, I think we've kind of weakened ourselves in that striker spot, because he was a good. If Conway was fit and Strellick was struggling with fitness, or vice versa, he could fill that gap. So we've lost that there, but I trust Kim Hellberg will find a solution if need be to fill that void. The big one, obviously, Hayden, Hackney. In previous windows, we've lost Morgan Rogers and we've lost that Lat. So to keep hold of our prized asset, Hayden Hackney, was a fantastic boost, absolutely brilliant, and it was so refreshing to see him come out and just stamp all over any transfer rumours, any speculation. When there was whispers of Nottingham Forest coming in on deadline day, you didn't think for a second he was going, because he's stamped all over those. So yeah, really happy with that. Matt Targett, for me, he's a Rolls Royce player at this level. Over Christmas, there was games where I was amazed he played against Fulham, because I thought, he's been playing with an injury. He's been, you wouldn't think the way he plays, and I thought there's a good chance to rest him, but testament to him, no, he doesn't want to rest. He wants to play for the team, and he could play left back, he could play centre half, he could probably play him a bit like Alan Brown. He could probably play in most areas of the pitch. He'll do a job for you. So to see him stay as well was a huge boost. So overall, it's not a spectacular one because we didn't land that striker, but still a very decent window for me.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think a lot of the best parts of this window that I like are the business we'd already done, and the business that didn't end up getting done in regards to Matt Targett still being here. That was massive, because I think he's a huge, and he's fantastic on the pitch, but I imagine he's also a fantastic character off the pitch. His experience and his leadership qualities, I think, are priceless when you're a team fighting for promotion. And obviously Hayden Hackney is the biggest of the lot. I think we said, didn't we, probably in the pod we all did in the summer, actually, Boro's league position and how we got on in the league would probably be a huge factor on what happened with Hayden Hackney, and we might be faced with a real battle to keep him in January, when in fact it's actually been the complete opposite. It's almost been a breeze because of how well Boro have done, and his desire to want us to get promoted and him be the one lead us there, which is really, really fantastic to hear. And I really hope he does, because I think he'll become a Middlesbrough legend for me if he stayed, turned down a big team like Ipswich, which, it'd be the easy promotion, it'd be the easy way out, you'd be on more money, he stayed here, and I hope he gets his rewards for his loyalty in that regard. And, there's Castledine and Munroe. I'm not going to underplay them two signings. I think they're both, I guess, signings that fit the model, I'll say, in quotation marks. I know a lot of people don't like the words the model, but I do think they're two exciting players who in a few years are going to be really good for us. Castledine already looks good, and I've heard such great things from Finley, Munroe. Like you, Sarmiento was an intriguing one. I didn't see the quotes about Kim Hellberg and him loving him, but if Hellberg loves him, then I'll love him too, because I have absolute faith in everything that man says. But yeah, the outgoings are interesting. I've got to agree. We'll get into the striker discussion a bit later in more detail, but I'm also one of the few, well, I say few, I don't know if I'm in the minority or not, to be honest, who would have preferred to get us a striker. I think we saw only as recently as December a few injuries and a barren spell, and we went 4 games without a goal. And I think back then everyone was crying out for a striker, and I think there's every chance, for as good as we are and as great as we are at the minute scoring goals, we could go back to that. We need to be careful in that position. A few injuries, and I think we're suddenly in a little bit of trouble. So that's an interesting, not risk, but potential banana skin that could sort of come to bite us. And then, yeah, Kante leaving, not surprised. Nypan being recalled, big shame, but not surprised, I guess. So it's been a busy one. Coming to you, Craig. I mean, what are your sort of initial thoughts on the business that Boro have done in the transfer window? And, I guess from what you've heard and what you know, is it a transfer window that the club are satisfied with the business we've done?
Yeah, I think so. I would think largely satisfied, as you both touched on. It's no secret they would have liked to have bring centre forward in, and difficult window, difficult market to get a centre forward in. So they didn't manage to do that, but I think they went in a good position. Chris referenced obviously last January and the disaster that was Kelechi Iheanacho, and obviously a totally different set of circumstances there, where Middlesbrough knew that they were letting the star striker go, an offer from Atlanta that they just could not turn down. But for whatever reason, that dragged on and on and on. And it was very late in the window that Middlesbrough had the assurances that he was leaving and they needed a replacement. In the time that was remaining, Iheanacho was kind of what they came up with in the end. But I think it's well known as well that there were other options which they didn't move on because they weren't what at the time Michael Carrick wanted, whereas Iheanacho was. And, a totally different set of circumstances. And now they're not in that desperate circumstance. Ironically, one of the strikers they did want to bring in at that point in that January, David Strelec, is now at the club. He's not had the best 6 months so far at the club, but I think there's still a lot of belief and a lot of confidence that there's a lot more to come from him. And I think he was showing good signs in Kim Hellberg's first few games in charge before he got his injury. Still hope for Cali Sen when he gets back from injury as well. And of course, nice recently to see Tommy Conway back among the goals as well. So, yeah, I think there's an element of risk there in not bringing in a striker, but it certainly wasn't for the one to try. And ultimately, there was, I'm sure we'll touch on it in more detail, but there was, there was a lot of effort made to try and get a striker, and nothing ultimately landed for them. And the one thing they were adamant they weren't going to do is either overpay for a striker or B, sign anybody, sign somebody who ultimately they didn't feel would be good enough. And you're probably heading back into the kind of Iheanacho territory, although, at the time everyone hoped he would be good enough, and there was excitement to an extent that you were getting somebody in who, had won the FA Cup, had a lot of Premier League pedigree. Obviously that one didn't work out. So there was a real caution around just bringing anybody in, just any striker. It had to be the right one, and ultimately that right striker wasn't there available for them this month.
Yeah, what about the incomings we have made then? Castledine, Munroe, and I guess Sarmiento too. I mean, what are your thoughts on them two? Was Castledine and Munroe, were they opportunistic signings? We've seen Boro make quick moves for youngsters in the past, and Jeremy Sarmiento is another really interesting move that I guess it's one Kim Hellberg's a big fan of.
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head with Munroe and Castledine, opportunistic signings. I've spoken to Kieran Scott in the past, and that's what he's called a lot of the recruitment that Boro do is opportunistic. It's well known now that they keep a close eye and scout a lot of the kind of elite Premier League clubs, academy teams, keep a close eye on kind of who the top up-and-coming youngsters are and who they might be interested in signing should they ever become available, whether that's on loan or whether that's, in both of these cases permanently. They're well aware of kind of who the top young talents are, and it just so happened that we get to January, both have had successful loans lower down the pyramid, and both Chelsea and Aston Villa say this is the opportune time to kind of cash in, and yeah, Boro ultimately said, yeah, let's take that opportunity. So I think in some respect, both are kind of signings with the future in mind, not necessarily immediacy. But I think the encouraging thing, certainly with Castledine and the kind of two extended appearances that he's had so far, I think he's looked really good, really confident, which you'd expect given how well he did at Huddersfield. But yeah, just somebody who looks like he can make an immediate impact for Middlesbrough in the Championship, which is really encouraging, and you'd maybe call it a bonus because he hasn't been brought in this month with that necessarily in mind. The Sarmiento signing, that one is, ultimately they wanted to strengthen. I know Chris mentioned Burgzorg, and that's kind of like for like replacement, if you like, as they say, not like for like in how they play, but one forward goes, another forward comes in, and Sarmiento is someone who they really liked, really wanted, saw an opportunity to bring him in, failed like because he's played at Brighton. In fact, most of I think he made 20 odd appearances at Brighton, if I'm not mistaken, and the vast majority of them came under Roberto De Zerbi, who Kim Hellberg has been open with as being one of his, main influences, and likes to kind of base his style very much similar to that of the former Brighton boss. So somebody who they felt could come in and fit immediately with how Boro want to play. He has 2 championship promotions under his belt, of course, as well. So, that kind of experience there. And certainly from what I gather from talking to people at Ipswich, the promotion he had 2 seasons ago, he had a real knack for kind of popping up at vital times and scoring some massive goals for Boro. I know this window there was a lot of kind of talk about, Ramirez and Rhodes in 2016 and how big those signings were in helping Boro get over the line. And it very much feels like on the Ipswich end, Sarmiento was kind of remembered in similar terms. So fingers crossed he can come in, make a similar kind of impact here and help Boro get over the line. But as you say, a loan with an obligation to buy as well. He's 24, I think, if I'm not mistaken. That right kind of age that Boro like to recruit players at, where they probably have quite a bit of experience already under the belt, but are still coming into what you would call their prime years, still development there to do. So I think someone who, another player who they believe can kind of grow with them as a football club.
So, Craig, Seny Dieng, talk to us about what happened there, because it was one of those things that popped up at the start of the window that he was likelihood he was going to go to Hull, and then people kind of put it at the back of their minds and thought that must just be going on behind the scenes, and then it sort of came to nothing, and then it was talking going to Feyenoord late in the window, and then that kind of fell through, and we kind of thought, well, is he still going to go somewhere? Is he going to do a Peter Otter winging and put himself in the KC Stadium car park, hope he gets a last minute move, and now he's got to awkwardly come back to Rockcliffe when we've just signed another goalkeeper.
Yeah, it's a really strange and ultimately frustrating situation. I think it's no secret really that Middlesbrough, wanted him out. They wanted him out in the summer. Nothing materialised then, so we get to January and they want him out in January. As you say, there was a move there on the table for him to Hull. He kind of they offered what they would offer, and he looked at it and said, "Well, I've got 18 months left on my Boro contract, and I'll get more at Boro." So he kind of asked the club, "Can you make up the difference? Can you pay the rest of the wage on top of what Hull are offering, so that for the next 18 months I'm earning what I should be?" Boro didn't want to do that, understandably so. And so that ultimately collapsed. Then the Feyenoord move came about, as you see. I think it was the day before deadline day. I think they came in. Loan with an option to buy was all agreed. And from there, it's actually not, not kind of clear why or what happened there. But for whatever reason, that one broke down. Middlesbrough found out it wouldn't be happening. I think about an hour or so before everything went through on Wildsmith. Ultimately, there's frustration on the Boro end. It's clear they wanted him off the books. They wanted him gone. And they just decided to press ahead. Let's get with the got Joe Wildsmith deal quite far down the line. He was in doing all these photos, his video, all that kind of stuff. And I think in the end they just decided, look, we're in a position where we need a better backup option for Salisbury than ultimately, without being disrespectful, but ultimately what John McLaughlin is, and they decided to go ahead with the Wildsmith loan, under the premise that ultimately Dieng is now not going to be registered. It's a frustrating situation because he's now, for certainly the rest of the season, the next 6 months or so, he's going to be getting paid a wage when ultimately he can't play. So it's a frustrating situation for them to be in. There is frustration about that, but ultimately he won't be registered in the squad, and Joe Wildsmith will be instead.
Yeah, I was going to actually ask you about that, Craig. What happens next with Seny Dieng, and what is the story there? Because fans are now asking the question with 4 first-choice goalkeepers, is there a chance Boro will just release him? Is it too expensive for Boro to release him? Is it actually worthwhile, unfortunately, having to pay a player who's not going to contribute at all? Or is there still, I don't know what the deadlines are around Europe, if there's still an option somewhere that he could get a move? Or is it a case of, yeah, he's here, he's going to have to pick up a wage and he is going to be a Boro player until the summer?
Yes, I mean, there are a couple of options. There are some windows across the world where they are still open for a little bit longer. I can't remember whether it's this Friday or next Friday, where the Turkish league is still open. And certainly earlier in the window, there was a bit of interest from Turkey. Hadn't gone anywhere. And as of yesterday, when I asked, the club weren't aware of any other options that Seny Dieng, or they had to get rid of Seny Dieng. But there is a chance, if any club in Turkey is kind of in need of a goalkeeper, there's every chance now that they see what's going on with Seny Dieng and come in and feel like that's an opportunity. MLS, I think theirs goes on quite a bit longer, because if I'm not mistaken, I think it's end of Feb, start of March that their season starts, so their window still goes on for quite a bit longer. I remember a couple of years back, Matt Crooks left in the end of February to go to Real Salt Lake. That was long after the January window had closed. And then, so there's those two options. There's potentially still the option that he goes, but at the moment, no interest there, which is an issue. You mentioned, obviously, paying off his contract, releasing him. It's something they could do, but the issue with that is, and probably something he wants, it's you're paying ultimately then 18 months, whatever his wage is, over 18 months, you have to pay that in one lump sum. So it's bad for cash flow. It's bad for, your yearly financial results, because you're paying in one lump sum. So actually, in some sense, you're better off just continuing to pay him monthly, and then, seeing where the land lies and what you can do in the summer again. But it is an option. It might be something they explore just to get him off the books ultimately. The other option, unfortunately, is just going to be that he sits there. He'll have to come to work every day. He'll have to do his training and whatnot. But he won't be in the 25-man AFL squad list, so he won't be able to play.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah, you'd rather, I guess, pay him 3 months of wages and get rid of him in the summer than 18 months, when that's clearly not the idea to have him here for another 18 months. Another quick one on another player who's left the club before we get on to 2 players who are still here. I just want to ask you about Sverre Nypan briefly. What's the story there? Has it always been for a lot of January a case of the likelihood was he was always going to go to Manchester City and they were always going to recall him? Because I feel like the writing's been on the wall for Nypan. He's just not been able to break into the squads. Even with Hellberg coming in, I thought he might have stood a better chance, but it's never really materialised. So was it always an expectation that he would go back to Manchester City, or is that something that happened late on in the window?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I was quite surprised it didn't happen sooner than it did, ultimately. I can only assume that for a large part of January, Man City were trying to source an alternative loan for him. That didn't happen. And kind of by the end of the window, they had that decision to make in terms of, do we recall him just to have him here, which is ultimately what they have done, or do we leave him at Middlesbrough and see what happens, see if he picks up the odd minute here or there like he has been doing? It's a shame. I think they signed him back in the summer. They'd obviously scouted him when he was still in Norway. Liked what they saw there, and ultimately it got to a point where a lot of big clubs liked what they saw as well. Middlesbrough were aware of Sverre Nypan, but also knowing that it wasn't likely they were going to ever be able to sign him until he makes that summer move to Manchester City. Good relationship between the two clubs. That's a loan possibility that Boro took. We saw in the past how effective the loan market can be if you get the right players from the Premier League. And certainly I think when they got him in the summer, there was an air of kind of Ben Doak about it in terms of how much of a difference he made. And that was the hope with Sverre Nypan. I think ultimately, when I assess it, he could be one of those players where in a few years he goes on to be a really, really quality player. And you're looking at him and thinking, bloody hell, remember when he was at Boro? It was just the wrong time. I think ultimately he's just come to England, just signed for Man City, and then straight away loaned out to Boro. No experience of English football, and for me, just whenever he did get an opportunity, he didn't look like he was up to speed with it. He didn't look like he could handle the physicality of it, and he just struggled to make an impact. The one thing I would say in his defence is that certainly with Norway, and I think I'm right in saying with Rosenborg as well, he tended to play more as an 8, a central midfielder, probably kind of like a Hayden Hackney role. Unfortunately for him, at Middlesbrough, he had Hayden Hackney, Aidan Morris, and Alan Brown ahead of him. So we probably never saw him at Middlesbrough in his best position. But unfortunately, whatever opportunities he did get, he didn't take. And, it was hard to argue with the decision to limit his game time because he just wasn't doing it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Craig. I think he was always up against it from the start. Coming off the back of Ben Doak's loan last season, there's a lot of comparisons made there. Obviously, he's come from Man City, very highly rated. Football Manager also played a part. He's a wonder kid on Football Manager. He's going to be brilliant. He's going to tear the league up. And yeah, I think it's one of those players who, he's only 19. I think we all have to remember. So it's, come to a new country, new league. And yeah, I think it was one of those where no doubt technically he's a very good footballer. And like you said, I have no doubt that we'll be watching the TV in a few years' time. We'll say, bloody hell, he played for us, really? And he couldn't do anything for us. But I think ultimately he wasn't physical enough and he wasn't quick enough for this league. And that's not a criticism of him. That's just some players, it just doesn't work, does it? It's just not the right fit. And I just think Middlesbrough in the Championship this season, it wasn't a good fit for him. Fair play to the club for trying, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. And that's what these loans are for. If it doesn't work, call it a day. And yeah, so I think it's best for both parties, best for Nypan and for Middlesbrough that he's gone back so he can sort of recalibrate and see what he wants to do next. And obviously we can make use of that squad space.
Yeah, no, I agree. I stand by. I think Nypan will be a fantastic player in a few years, and maybe in his next loan or next 2 or 3 seasons, wherever he is, even if he's broken the City team, I think he'll be a top footballer. And I think probably, we say we got him too early. Maybe this was the only window of opportunity Boro would have had to have got him, because if he'd have gone on loan elsewhere first, or we'd have got him at a later age, he might have been too good to come to Championship anyway. So it's a shame. I agree completely, though. In terms of what Craig said on his position, I don't know if maybe we brought him in with the idea of if Hackney leaves, which obviously hasn't happened because we've done miles better than I think anyone anticipated. But never quite got into his best position. I agree. But also equally didn't really take his opportunity and didn't look like he was up for the physicality. So I think there were a number of factors that didn't really work in his favour. But we wish him all the best. And I'll still like to follow his career because I do think he'll be a top player, and at least we can say he played for us, even if it's before he goes on to be the superstar that I still think he will. On to 2 players who are still here, and I think 2 of the best pieces of business in the transfer window that didn't end up amounting to any business. And I'll start with Chris on this because I guess how important is it that we've kept hold of both Matt Targett and Hayden Hackney? Obviously, Newcastle not opting to take Matt Targett up on the recall option there, and of course keeping Hayden Hackney as well. How important, Chris, is it that we've kept both of them players in our squad?
Oh, absolutely massive. I thought Hackney was gone in the summer. As soon as Ipswich had that offer accepted, I thought surely there's some Premier League clubs are looking here and thinking £20 million is a snip for a player of his potential. I thought there'd be a line of Premier League, and I couldn't believe that there was no Premier League clubs coming in again. So I was delighted to see that he didn't go to Ipswich, that he chose to stay here. And then, like we said in the summer, hopefully if he can see that we're ambitious and we're pushing for top 2, hopefully it's enough to make him stay. And that's proven to be the case, hasn't it? Like I said, he's completely rubbished any thought of him going elsewhere. It's his dreams to lead this club to the Premier League, and I just pray that he gets a chance to do that. And then if you went in the summer after getting us promoted, I don't think anyone would begrudge him that, because he stuck around when plenty of other players would have jumped ship at the first opportunity. Like you said, Ipswich throwing money around, that would have been an easy move for him to do. So yeah, absolutely delighted to see Hayden Hackney still here. Matt Targett, yeah, as I mentioned, for me, yeah, he has been a quality addition. He just, whether he's left back or he's centre half, just oozes class. His dead ball delivery as well as brilliant. As he's good in the air as well. He's got at least one header, hasn't he? He's pretty good at the other end of the pitch as well. So yeah, I think he's been a very, very good addition. Matt Targett and Alan Brown, loan signings, have been top notch. We'd say the Nypan one didn't work, but those two have been fantastic.
Yeah, I think we've done wonders with the more experienced Championship heads that we've brought in. I'd put Callum Britton in that category with Matt Targett, Alfie Jones. I think we said a lot last season, didn't we, that maybe we didn't have the experience in the team, the leadership at times to help us see games out and get through, tough spells. And I think we can see this season how resilient this team is. Our record from going in front is outstanding. And I think a lot of that is down to the strong heads on some of them players. Targett, Britton, Jones, they've been there, they've done it in the Championship, and I think having them in the squad and their experience as well as their quality has been priceless, as is Hayden Hackney, priceless. And I guess, Craig, firstly as well, how important is it that we've kept both, but also how close did we get to losing both Matt Targett to Newcastle and Hayden Hackney as well, with potential interest in the window?
Yeah, I mean, the Targett one was interesting. I think it was quite clear, really, that Newcastle didn't really want to recall him. I think if they had have wanted to, they'd have done it very early on. It was almost like, that was like the last resort. Matt Targett had made absolutely clear to Newcastle that he didn't want to go back there. He wanted to stay at Middlesbrough. He had 2 frustrating seasons there, and he was probably going to go back and sit on the bench more than likely, and he didn't want that. So Eddie Howe was very honest in saying that he respected that, and all being well, their injury record didn't worsen, and he would be able to stay. They'd respect those wishes, which thankfully is what happened. It all kind of rested on. I think at the time Lewis Hall was just getting back from injury, and Dan Burn was due back. So it largely rested on those two being fine, and thankfully that was the case. And he remains a Boro player, and yeah, just echoing everything yourself and Chris have said there. I think he's been absolutely brilliant so far. He's just got such a cool head. There's moments where some of his touches or his passes and things like that, you just see straight away that Premier League quality. He maybe doesn't have as much pace as what you'd like in a fullback, and isn't a similar kind of fullback to Callum Britton, who'll get up that wing and really, really attack. But in his technical ability, and if you find him in the right areas, he can be so good on the ball, as well as just such an effective, defender, as he's proven playing both left back and centre back. So I think he's been an excellent signing, and as you see it, to put in that list of the other kind of players like that who, I've added so much to a Middlesbrough side who last season, we all had similar complaints about a team who, lost more points than any other side in the division from winning positions, and it just felt like they threw games away week in, week out. Whereas now, complete opposite, and players like Matt Targett are vital to that. Vital to seeing you throw in games like Saturday against Norwich when it's tight, and they're piling on the pressure late on, as you'd expect. Cool heads like Matt Targett are vital. And yeah, Hayden Hackney again, it was something that was never really close, never considered. If anything, the Nottingham Forest bid late on was a surprise, because we spoke to him on the Saturday after the Norwich game. He scored that absolutely superb goal, and then made clear that he had no desire to go. It's his dream to lead this club to promotion. And, as I think you alluded to at the start there, we were sat on this podcast at the end of the summer transfer window saying that, can they keep Hayden Hackney in January? Well, it probably depends on where they are in the league table come then. as we are joint top, being in and around that area the whole of January. From Hayden Hackney's position, as he said, he's a Middlesbrough lad. He used to sit on the terraces watching the team. I'm sure in the past he's alluded to the fact he was there for that Brighton game 10 years ago. It's his dream to lead this club to promotion, and the fact that he can see it, the fact that it is realistically within grasp, he was never ever going to leave this month, not a chance. And fair play to Boro. That I don't know exactly what the Nottingham Forest bid was, but it wasn't even considered, and it was telling. I think they came in for Hackney because there was the Andre Engels, is it, from Celtic, that had 2 bids knocked back from him for him, and it was telling that 1 bid for Hackney, and then they went straight back in from that lad from Celtic. So it was clear straight away that Boro's message was absolutely not. You've got no chance, and Forest quickly gave up.
So talking of a couple of outgoings, Craig, 2 players who've left the club this month on initial loan deals. It'll be interesting actually to see where their futures lie and if they do lie elsewhere or back at Middlesbrough in a few months' time. Starting with Delano Burgzorg. Bit of a saga, this one, wasn't it? It was on, it was off, it was on, it was off. And then obviously we've been left with the question of, should he have gone at all? So, yeah, talk to us about the saga that was Delano Burgzorg to Bristol City. And I guess, is that it for him? I mean, I stressed it was a loan, but do you see him have any kind of future in a Boro shirt as well?
Yeah, I mean, that'll be interesting, won't it, in terms of how he does at Bristol City and what the ultimate outcome is of that loan, because as you say, they do have an option to buy now in the summer. But yeah, I think ultimately now that it was a bit of a saga. It was on, it was off, and then it was back on again, as you said, and it was all connected to Jeremy Sarmiento. Boro thought they had Sarmiento, frustrated with how negotiations were going, they walked away. But Sarmiento was so keen to join Boro. I think Birmingham came in for him later in the window, and he made clear that Boro was where he wanted to go. And so Brighton ultimately came back to the table with Boro and got that one over the line. And that's why, Boro then went back to Bristol City and got the Burgzorg deal back on as well. I think ultimately it comes down to 2 things. It comes down to space in the squad. When you're bringing in Sarmiento, you need to find a space in the squad for him. But then also wages as well. They needed to trim that wage bill. It was too high. Interestingly, around the Burgzorg one, I had similar conversations in relation to it, as in explaining why it's so important. I think we probably on this podcast, the one that we did after the summer transfer window, probably discussed Borges, if I'm not mistaken, and kind of have the club left themselves short by letting him go and things like that. And the way it was put to me after that is, with Borges, by loaning him to Bristol City for a season, the club have saved themselves £2 million in wages. But because that's what Bristol City are covering while he's there. And unfortunately, the club in its current position, if it wants to, continue, in a way where they can be competitive because of the budget they have to be responsible with the budget. They can't just, have lots and lots of players on the books on big wages. When they're bringing players in, they need to move players out as well. Now, obviously, it would have been, there's probably other candidates. It would have been nice to, for example, get a Micah Hamilton out, who clearly isn't going to feature and isn't going to, contribute anywhere near as much as what a Burgzorg might have done in the second half of the season. But ultimately, there's a massive difference in their wages, and there's a massive difference in their, kind of game time expectations as well. Sarmiento's coming in to kind of hopefully have a big impact in the second half of the season, and Burgzorg's had some big moments, but I think in 18 months, ultimately, he hasn't been up to it. I think that's the cold, hard reality of it. He's a very frustrating player. I think there's moments where he looks like he could be an absolutely fantastic attacking player at this level. But the cold, hard facts are 9 times out of 10, the end product and the decision making are just not where it needs to be. And, there's been a lot of efforts at Boro to kind of try and coach that, to try and improve that. And it hasn't happened. He hasn't made the necessary improvement. And I think ultimately then you've got to make the tough calls and say, that's a big wage that we can get off the wage bill. And that helps massively.
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of that, Craig. He is a very hot and cold player, and he's an immensely frustrating player. I think he's one of those players who, if he just did one thing less, like not hold onto the ball as long, or get a shot off earlier, or take one less touch, he'd be a much better player. I think my only scepticism with letting him go is that I remember when me and Matt were at Derby away, New Year's Day, and Semenoff injured at half time and Gilbert came on, and you looked at that bench and it was Baptiste, Brown, Nypan, Hamilton, Hansen, who seems to be in the naughty step for whatever reason. He just doesn't seem to get any minutes under Hellberg. McLaughlin, Kante, Silvera. You're looking thinking, there's nothing there. There's nothing to bring on in that final third, and you're just hoping that David Strelec, who obviously he struggled with injuries this season, who I no doubt is a good player. I think we're kind of just relying on Strelec getting back up to fitness. Saturday, I think, was obviously he's been out for a while. Was a tough one for him. His cameo, I think he looked goosed after 5 minutes. To be fair to him, but it's one of those. He's going to get match fitness by playing games. Sen, I kind of personally see more as a wide player, so that would be my only scepticism in that move. Is that centrally, as like if it happened to Tommy Conway, he's just a different profile of forward. That a bit bigger, a bit stronger, hold the ball up, could turn a defender. But like you say, if there's no moves in the offering for likes of Hamilton and Hansen, I can see why the club have done it to get his wages off the books.
Yeah, I mean, we were quite high on squad spaces. I think we had like 27 of the 25 that were going to be filled with Sarmiento and Malanda coming in. So we would have had to have got a chunky few players out the door. And I guess if Hansen wasn't going to go anywhere and Hamilton didn't in the end, yeah, maybe with the mindset of getting that backup goalkeeper in, we needed to shift Burgzorg out. But yeah, I do think he gave us something up top that we didn't have, albeit I do think he's a limited player who was good, I think, at bringing on late in games to help hold up the ball or carry it into a corner or use his physicality. I think he was quite good at holding the ball up, but he was inconsistent. So I guess, you give and take with Delano Burgzorg in a sense. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he does at Bristol City and if his future is there or at Boro or elsewhere. And I guess it's the same with Abdoulaye Kante, Craig. I feel like he's one of them players who came, went, we never really seen him, we might never see him. And even if Boro, well, especially if Boro go up, I think the chance of him getting anywhere near the team is going to be next to impossible. And even if we're still in the Championship and we're pushing, we might lose Hackney. We might still have a top quality midfield with plenty of depth in there. So, yeah, is Abdoulaye Kante a signing that just didn't work? He's gone back to France. We'll probably never see him again, or is his loan deal still with a hope that he can come back and still play a part as a Boro player in the future?
Yeah, it would appear that it's kind of like it's an open door, essentially, interestingly, because like Burgzorg's loan, it has the option for Seny Dieng to make that a permanent signing. But I think there's an appreciation that it requires them to win promotion to make that a reality. And I think the 5th at the moment, not having the best of seasons down in Liga 2. So yeah, interestingly, Kim Hellberg, when he was asked about him at the last press conference, he kind of said, our current thinking or understanding is that he probably will come back to us in the summer. So this was a good opportunity for him to go, play more games, get a bit more experience under his belt, and hopefully as a result of that, return to Middlesbrough next season a better player. Ultimately, it'll be down to him, won't it? He'll come back, whatever he does in the next 6 months or so, he'll then come back in the summer. And, plenty of other players have proven in the past, Sammy Silvera this season, for example, you can go out on loan, good or bad experience, you can come back, and if you do the right things, you can, there'll be a space in the squad for you. I think ultimately this month, the fact that, Kim Helber clearly likes Alex Gilbert a lot, so he's become a backup option. Law McCabe returned from Plymouth, and because he played for Boro earlier this season, there was no opportunity to move him out again. Boro were well stocked in that midfield area, obviously with the three senior lads ahead that we've mentioned, Brown, Hackney, and Morris. So Kante wasn't going to get anywhere near the Boro team in the second half of this season. So it was one where it's win-win really for Boro. Loan him out to Saint Etienne. If he does well and they want to keep him, fine, make your money back. It was a gamble that didn't work, but was worth a go. If he goes to Saint Etienne, they don't end up signing him, but he plays a few games and comes back a better player, then again, they've won on that situation too. So, yeah, it's a case of see what happens with the loan and the doors are open if he does come back. But if he doesn't, then it was a risk that didn't pay off, but was worth taking.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be very interesting to see where Alpha Kante's career takes him in the next few months. I like what I saw of him, to be honest, and I don't know if he was maybe better suited to a Rob Edwards type of defensive midfielder. Maybe Hellberg wants more progressive players. I mean, even the deepest of midfielders, if it's Morris or Gilbert, he still likes to be, good on the ball and, good ball carriers. Kante looked more of a player who, was a defensive terrier who would break up play and then just pop it off to a defender or his fellow midfielder. So, yeah, it depends as well, I think, how Hellberg wants his midfielders to play and if Abdoulaye Kante fits into that profile. Let's get into the meat of what I think took up all of Boro's, the end of Boro's January transfer window. It was the 2026 version of Fuchs or Branca or Jordan Rhodes. Would it be another huge January signing, a mid-season signing that, Steve Gibson would find a few extra quid behind the sofa and would splash the cash on a centre forward that would ultimately give Boro the big push that would get us over the line? Obviously, a lot of talk about the opportunity that Boro have and once in a decade opportunity as it stands, maybe the best we'll have for a long time to get promoted. Is it worth gambling, splashing out on that centre forward? Obviously, names were linked. The biggest one, Adam Armstrong, we'll get into that. Didn't end up happening, despite other names as well being linked. I know you've touched upon it, Chris. I know you feel quite strongly on it and you've mentioned it already, but the lack of a striker, Boro coming out of the window, I know we've touched upon it already, but what side of the fence do you sit on Boro not getting a striker? Is it something we can live without? Is it something we might live to regret? Was it a want? Was it a need? What's your sort of final stance on that?
I came into this window saying that a striker was the absolute number one priority. It's one of those where we didn't get one. It wasn't for lack of trying. I'm not one of those people who just think the club should just spend 7, 8, 10 million pounds and commit to 30, 40, 50, whatever £1,000 a week wages just for the sake of getting one. It is disappointing that we didn't get one. Will we regret it? Time will tell, won't it? I think if we can keep Tommy Conway fit as he has been all season, if we get David Strellick fit and he doesn't have any more injury problems this season, then I think we'll be okay. I don't think it'll be as much of an issue. It's if something happens to Tommy Conway, and at this stage of the season, you're only a bad tackle away from an ankle ligament injury, bash your knee or something like that, and you can be out for 2-3 months, and that's pretty much the season done. So I think we are leaving it a little bit in the lap of the gods. It's not like we're known as a club who gets injuries. This is the third season now where we've had seasons ravaged of injury. So, yeah, it is a bit disappointing. I said, if we can keep the players we've got fit, I've no issue with that. The start 11 we've got, I think, is very, very good. And, I trust Kim Hellberg. If there is a problem, would he do something like have a McGree, Whitaker, Sarmiento sort of false nine kind of situation? He'd probably do something like that, and I think he would find solutions. But it's one of those, isn't it, where Tommy Conway's been the only guy you can hang your hat on, and you got Strellick who struggled with fitness all season. Sen, is he still injured? I think he is, but yeah, he's not really had that much of an impact. I think having a Jordan Rhodes type signing like Armstrong would have been a nice boost just to get us over the line. But I can understand why they've not committed the big money. But yeah, it would have been nice. It's certainly been nice to have one, and the fact that the club were trying to get one shows that they thought as well that we did need one. So yeah, I think it's certainly time will tell on that one.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's that we didn't get a specific striker that I was a little underwhelmed by. It wasn't, we didn't sign Adam Armstrong specifically, so that's that's not good enough. I think it was more so just having that extra option because, as you say, maybe we're overreacting because of how many injuries we've suffered from in the last few seasons. And exactly a year ago, we had the infamous, we let Matt Clark go and Michael Carrick said, we'll be all right. And we weren't. And within a few weeks, our centre backs dropped like flies, and we were then playing Johnny Howson at centre half, and that was a fragile team as it was. And we sort of really, Michael Carrick especially, it was a quote that sort of never left him in the end. He looked back to sort of that really came back and bite him on the backside, so to speak. So maybe we're a little scarred from that, but I do agree. I just think people keep saying, well, you've got three strikers, but I still think Strelets has some way of getting up to speed. And I think clearly Kim Hellberg loves Tommy Conway. He loves what he does off the ball. He loves how he presses from the front, and he loves his energy. That there's a lot more to a Kim Hellberg centre forward than just scoring goals. And I don't see that same level of work off the ball from Strelets. Not that I'm saying he's lazy. I just think he's a different profile of centre forward. Whereas, as you say, Cali Sen, he's quick. I think he's fantastic at pressing, but he's been a bit part player because he's been in and out the side. He's been on the bench. He's injured. Probably looked a better impact player. So I do think the consequences of losing Tommy Conway to an injury would be absolutely huge. Plus, I thought we looked quite good in the 4-2-2-2 that we played a few months ago. And I guess if you've only got three striking options for two positions in the starting 11, that's a bit of a risky play as well. So I don't know if not having that fourth option limits us to just playing one up front, which might be fine. But yeah, there's just, maybe I'm just being an anxious Boro fan who's just looking at ways that this brilliant season and brilliant run can go wrong. But I do worry that a Tommy Conway injury would be pretty disastrous. But at the same time, I do then also have faith that Kim Hellberg is just that intelligent of a manager. He would come up with something that would, a false nine or whatever it may be, that would still get us, scoring goals. And let's not forget as well, we've scored the most goals in the Championship since Kim Hellberg's came in, and we're sharing the goals around. We're putting all this reliance on Tommy Conway, but he's got 4 goals, is it now? 4 or 5 goals or something. So maybe we can still survive with goals coming from elsewhere. But yeah, it's not like I'm throwing my toys out the pram and I'm furious and it's destroyed the window. It's not a disaster by any means, but I do think there are red flags and a few areas of caution with the fact we haven't got a centre forward in. But Craig, I guess the main talk is obviously around Adam Armstrong, although there were other targets as well. How close did we come to securing that centre forward? I guess more so Adam Armstrong, because he was the one Boro fans really wanted, and I'm sure the club really wanted as well. So how close did we get to making that deal a reality? And I guess, where do you sit in terms of Boro not having that extra striker that Chris said we clearly did want?
Yeah, definitely wanted one. That's clear, and I think all the points are, valid in terms of that's exactly why Boro did want one ultimately. But as we said earlier in the podcast, they came into the transfer window kind of, with that being a want rather than a need. I don't think they were ever desperate for one. I still don't think they're desperate for one. I think there's enough there within the squad to get them through. There's a reason ultimately. Is it 30 games now played? Joint top of the Championship, as you said, in the 13 games under Kim Hellberg. No one's created more chances or scored more goals than Boro in those 13 games. So, that's all there to prove that Boro can get through. As you say, you're only one or two big injuries away from potentially that being an issue, but ultimately, what championship club aren't in that position? Probably most clubs in the world. Even, you looked at Man City last season, for example, they lost one player in Rodri, and it completely went wrong for them. So even, arguably the best club in England, lose one player and it's massive for them. So you could make that argument for everyone. You've got to try and keep your best players fit if you want to be competing at the top level. But yeah, I think in terms of did any of them come close, I think ultimately no. It was a massively frustrating window for Boro on that front. They came in with a few targets in mind. You do your planning pre-window. And again, it goes back to that kind of, opportunistic kind of element. And you'll look at your list of strikers who's on your database, and you'll see who could be available this month. So two of the names, there was three names I think came out ultimately, wasn't there, this month? There was Seny Dieng, there was the lad from Germany, who one of you guys might be able to help me out with with the pronunciation of his name.
No chance.
And then there was Adam Armstrong. The two lads, the Seny Dieng and the German lad. They were both players who, coming into this transfer window, had 6 months left on their contract. So straight away, you've scouted them, you like them, you put them on your list because you think there's a chance their clubs are going to sell them. The 6 months, it's the last possible opportunity. Gets into the window, Seny Dieng signs a new contract, does quite a nice interview, really, which I think is like a kind of a check on his list for potentially signing him down the line, because he basically comes out and says it wouldn't be right to leave the club under those circumstances. I'm not a thief. I signed a new contract so that if one day I do leave, the club can earn money on me. Which I thought, fair play. That's a really good attitude. But straight away, that means for Boro, he's off the list. They go after the German lad, 6 months left on his contract. HSV are in a Bundesliga relegation battle. He's only scored one goal, incidentally, but apparently he's a very important player for them. They won't let him go. Under no circumstances will they let him go. They make that clear. So again, that's another off the list. From what I understand, they came into the window with, a fair few strikers on the list in similar circumstances, and we're getting the same answers time and time again. Or they were getting, say, the valued, just, as a wild example, the value of this player at 5 million. They were being told we won't consider for anything less than 10. And that's when you start getting into kind of situations where if you start overpaying, then, you're giving yourself bigger problems down the line. So you have to walk away from those kind of deals. And then later in the window, that's when Adam Armstrong type things come up. I don't think anybody would have gone into January expecting Adam Armstrong to be available. Captain at Southampton, played most of their games, scored 11 goals. I'm very surprised ultimately that they have been so open to selling him, and clearly he was keen to leave, which is where it all comes from. The agent has let Boro know that there's potentially something to be done there. So they're having those conversations with Southampton, but from Southampton's point of view, although they aren't anywhere kind of near Boro at the moment, they'd still hope to have a strong second half to the season and get into those playoffs. And if Boro don't finish in the top two, Boro would also be in those playoffs. You wouldn't, from Southampton's perspective, want to find yourself in a position where you've given away a striker of Adam Armstrong's quality on the cheap, and then you're playing against him in the playoffs for a chance at all that money and promotion. So it always felt to me like that was going to be a very difficult one for Boro to do. But nevertheless, there were, the talks were there, they were ongoing. They were trying to see if there was something to be done there, if something could be done, because clearly Armstrong wanted it. And then, lo and behold, completely unexpectedly, Wolves come in with a 7 million plus 2 million bonus offer, which straight away is something that Boro are not going to do at this stage when they don't really need to do something. You're not going to pay, a package of £9 million for a striker who turns 29 this month, and in however many attempts so far in his career has ultimately never ever done it in the Premier League. It doesn't make sense. From Wolves' perspective, it looks to me like they're planning for next season. Ultimately, they know their fate. They're planning for next season, and he's a very good Championship striker. Obviously, on top of that, Wolves at the moment can offer him a much bigger package than Boro can offer him in terms of wages and potential bonus payments, whether that be goals, survival, whatever, and they can offer him 6 months of Premier League football too. I mean, from Adam Armstrong's perspective, he might look at this and say, I go to Wolves now, I fire some goals in and, play well. What's to say that I don't get a Premier League move in the summer and stay in the Premier League? I know it's unlikely, but every player will ultimately back themselves to kind of do well. So he goes there, and it's understandably an attractive move for him. But yeah, unfortunately, because of that, it didn't ever really come close to happening for Boro.
One name we did hear mentioned, Craig, on the forums and social media was the name of a former Boro player who we were rumoured to be interested in by the name of Patrick Bamford. To your knowledge, was there any truth in that, or was that just rumour and innuendo?
No, yeah, so they did have a conversation with Patrick Bamford, or certainly his representatives. Obviously, just to kind of give the background to that, he went in at Sheffield United, didn't he, on a free after his Leeds contract got ripped up early, and he ended up doing really well for Sheffield United, to be fair to him, but it was a short-term contract that expired midway through January, so there was the opportunity there to to potentially bring him in. Before he'd actually signed for Sheffield United, he'd been training at Coventry for a long time. And Frank Lampard, who knew him from Chelsea, was dead keen by all accounts of getting him in at Coventry. And they'd had negotiations, and ultimately, apparently, they wouldn't offer what Bamford wanted. And he didn't end up signing for them. So yeah, then he ended up at Sheffield United. He does really well at Sheffield United. His contract's coming to an end. And from what I understand, Boro and Ipswich both had conversations. Ipswich, like Boro, wanted a striker this month. They beat Boro to Chuba Akpom in the summer, but both Akpom and their other striker, George Hurst, haven't actually been doing the business for them. So they were desperate for a striker this month as well, and didn't manage to get one, which, very similar reasons to Boro, really. They ultimately found the market very frustrating, and one in which they couldn't find the right striker. And obviously Ipswich have a lot more money to spend than Boro because of those parachute payments from the Premier League. So, it gives you an even better idea of kind of what Boro were working with this month and what was available to them. But yeah, Bamford, they had the conversation. By all accounts, again, Bamford was dead keen. He'd have loved to return to Boro, but what he was asking for was just too much. They weren't willing to pay not just the wage, but the length of contract, the bonus payments that he wanted on top of that. It was something that they walked away from, and Ipswich walked away from as well. Whereas I think Sheffield United, whether or not he's earning as much at Sheffield United as what he ultimately asked for at Boro and Ipswich, I don't know. But I think it's clear that they were in a far more kind of desperate position than what Boro and Ipswich were in. And so ultimately he stayed there. He signed a new contract there.
Interesting, yeah. Good question on the Bamford front, because that was a name that was mentioned a lot, and we know fans love the romance of bringing back an old player. So yeah, really good insight on what could have been the third coming of Patrick Bamford. I think it would have been, wouldn't it? He's getting to Juninho levels of Juninho levels of coming back to Boro and having spells at the Boro. There's not much else to really discuss now. I think we've covered the lot. I guess the final question I've got for both of you, and I'll start with Chris once again. How would you rate Boro's overall window? Are we stronger now? And I guess, where does it put your confidence of Boro getting promotion? If you want to also look at what our rivals have done as well.
I think overall it's been a decent window. Goalkeeper, if you look by position, goalkeeper. Well, we've got another goalkeeper. We don't that many goalkeepers now. We don't know what to do with one of them. So yeah, goalkeeper. You can see that position's improved. Defense. Obviously, he wasn't a January signing, but Malanda has come in this month, and yeah, looks absolutely brilliant. It's at the point now where you're thinking, right, Dale Fry's on the bench and he's made little cameos. You've got Alfie Jones to come back. How do these guys get back in the defense is that strong? How do these guys get in the team? Because you don't drop Malanda, and for me, you certainly don't drop Luke Ayling, because as good as those other two guys are, they simply do not have the range of passing that Luke Ayling's got. So you're looking at it now, if we can keep people fit, and we've also got George Edmondson to come back, possibly Darragh Lenihan, we're looking absolutely stacked in defence at the minute. So, yeah, defence, I'm happy with that. Midfield, that's a Castledine coming in for Nypan, Sarmiento coming in. Yep, good additions. Like I said, I'm excited hearing what Kim Hellberg had to say about Sarmiento. So I'm hoping he can be our Gaston Ramirez this season. He can be the one who gives us that spark to help us get over the line. I said up front, yeah. If you're talking strictly the striker position, I think we've possibly weakened our cover options there. But at the same time, I do think that providing Tommy Conway stays fit, I don't think it'll be an issue. Obviously, if he was to get injured tomorrow, then yeah, that is a problem, and it's a problem that we've kind of left ourselves open to. But fingers crossed that doesn't happen. So providing that key players can stay fit, then yeah, I don't see any reason why we can't push on and get top two, especially when you look at something like Ipswich's away form is utterly terrible. You think they've got, well, obviously the game tonight was postponed, but they've got 3 away games in a row to come now. So if we can get through these next 2 away games, which are really, really tough, Sheffield United and Coventry, then I think we'll be in a really good place.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think if you look for reasons to where we could improve, then yeah, you can pick holes. But I think ultimately we had a squad that was already firing us top 2 in the Championship. An automatic promotion squad, as you say. Goalkeeper, we've got stronger just by sheer quantity, I guess. But yeah, defensively, I mean, you could pull Malanda into the January window if you wanted to, and say, well, we have added him in January, and we've not lost a game. We've won every game in the Championship with him. He looks like the second coming of Beckenbauer, to be honest. I mean, he's incredible. I love him. Absolutely adore Malanda. I think he's my favourite player, to be honest. He's amazing. And then, yeah, you go into midfield. I don't think losing Kante is an issue. Nypan leaving, yeah, it's a shame, but I don't think it's detrimental. I think, again, like with Targett, you look at the fact that Targett's still here, Hackney's still here. If Targett leaves, gets recalled, I know we likely had backup options at left back, but you've got to then bring that person in. They've got to get integrated in the back four. That is an issue. So keeping that, as much of that back four together, is so important. So you can, maintain that strength just by keeping players here, which I think we've done really well. Hackney Staines, another one. Sarmiento for Burgzorg. I mean, time will tell on Sarmiento. I certainly hope he'll provide a little bit more consistency at the top of the pitch than what Delano Burgzorg did. And then, yeah, the striker, I agree. If things stay as they are, we've got literal proof that we'll score enough goals and we'll be fine. It's what do we do if something goes wrong at the top of the pitch? And it can go wrong quickly. Do we have the personnel to move things around? I think Hellberg will have a plan in mind. Whether it will work or not, and we can maintain the results, we'll see. But yeah, it's been a solid window. We've certainly had worse. Last January was bad. The Premier League January was very bad. So, let's not complain too much when, there were days where we were signing Adeline Guardiola and Rudy bloody Gazette. Anyway, Craig, yeah, let's not go there. Craig, you've seen many a transfer window come and go. You've seen the ins and outs and the intricacies. How would you sort of rate Boro's window? And would you say we've strengthened? And are you happy with the squad Boro have got going at the final running?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy with the squad they've got heading into the run-in. I think as we've touched on, where they are in the league is kind of the proof of that this is a good squad. It was already a good squad, and I guess have they strengthened? That will be determined in time, I guess, with how well Sarmiento does do. They've signed two good young players in Munroe and Castledine, which the for the future ultimately, but good signings to get over the line. Good for the kind of future of the club and keeping that in mind. I think the key for me and what makes it a good window ultimately is that we could have been ending this window without Matt Targett, without Hayden Hackney. The fact that we've got both still, that for me makes it, if not a window of strengthening, just a window of consolidating, making sure you've still got two huge players there. And as you see it, add Melander into the mix, who was technically a summer signing, but has only become available in January. He looks, he looks Premier League ready already. He looks absolutely superb. Boro have a very, very strong squad. And for me, they're in, a good position, a very, very good position to go on and get promotion now. So the big thing from January is that they haven't been weakened, and nothing has changed in my mind. I was already, believing that this Middlesbrough team were very capable of winning promotion, and I'm still very much, within that trail of thought.
Brilliant. Well, before I wrap up, Craig, I've got one more question for you. It's not in the notes. It's not been planned. I'm chucking this one at you completely off the script. Where are Boro finishing at the end of the season? Where do you think we're going to be?
I'll go second. I think they'll get that. I think they'll get second, and I'll take it. It'd be nice to go up as champions, wouldn't it? But I think they'll get second. I've got a sneaky suspicion that Ipswich their squad will still pull through, and they'll get top. But I think Boro now can finish above Coventry and get second.
That'd be a sick day for Coventry, that, wouldn't it?
To think the night Hellberg, he was watching on in the stands, and 10 points they moved clear of Boro that night to be at this stage 13 games later, level on points. I think that's going to be very detrimental to their mentality as well.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think if Coventry fall into the playoffs, the psychological blow that could have, I think from coming at such a height, to drop down would be significant. Whereas if we didn't make it, I don't think we'd be disappointed. Well, we would be, but it wouldn't be like a disaster, would it? It would sort of be, all right, we've not made it. It would
be a psychological sledgehammer, would it?
Yeah, exactly. Interesting enough, as we're recording this, Sheffield United, where we go in a couple of days, in just under a week actually, they're drawing 1 each against Oxford. Oxford were beating them at Bramall Lane. And another close friend of ours, Hull City, are being held to Watford 0-0, and by the looks of it, Watford have absolutely battered them. So that bodes well. So we'll see. We'll see how them results go. But yes, a huge thanks, Craig, for jumping on again. Your insight, your time, much appreciated. Like you say, the last pod we did was fantastic and did really well. So fingers crossed this one does. So thanks for jumping on once again.
Pleasure, lads. Enjoy it.
Definitely. And as I say, me and Chris will be champion. Back. He is the man of the people. Get him the Rock's belt that he got from the Hall of Fame. Get Craig the People's Champion belt. The Rock had it. WrestleMania. There's a wrestling reference for you all. But yeah, me and Chris will be back later on in the week. We're going to jump back on to do a more, as we do every month, a monthly review of January, seeing how our predictions fared before putting our necks on the block once again and predicting what Boro will do in a less busy February month. But until then, if you've enjoyed the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on your podcast providers, do give a like on YouTube, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already, leave us a comment in the section below. And if you are listening or you want to listen to this on your chosen podcast provider, there's a link tree in the description where you can find all the links you need to, and that will send you off to Spotify or wherever you choose to listen to your podcasts. And there'll also be links in the description to all of the wonderful social medias for the two lovely gents below. So you can keep up to date with all the great articles Craig puts out for the Gazette, and you can follow the TikTok sensation in the bottom left, Chris, and his fantastic dad and daughter match day vlogs that he does. Our resident TikTok viral superstar down there. But until then,
new one at Bramall Lane coming sooner.
It'll be box office when we go there and win 4-0. But yeah, wait for the one at the CBS. Bloody hell, yeah, that'll be something, won't it? But yeah, until then, take care, guys. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you all in the next one.